Okay, let's start with a really mind-bending question. What if life wasn't just a biological thing? What if things like stones, fire, even gods and demons were all part of the very same living system? Well, today we're diving into a text called the Preface to the Chapter on Life. And let me tell you, it completely flips our usual understanding of existence on its head. So let's explore it.
All right, so right out of the gate, this text hits us with a wild idea. It defines life not as something biological, but as get this, a spiritual antimatter structure. I know, that's a mouthful, right? But stick with me, because that phrase is basically the key that unlocks this entire way of thinking. It's asking us to look past flesh and blood and to imagine that the real essence of life is something, well, completely different from what we thought.
So, if you just go with that definition for a second, what happens? Well, all the boundaries we put around the word life they completely melt away. Suddenly, life is everywhere. I mean, not just in plants and animals, but in fire, in ice, even inside a rock. In this worldview, the entire universe is just buzzing with a whole spectrum of life, from tiny microbes all the way up to demons and gods. Some of it we can see, sure, but the text suggests that most of it's just beyond what our senses can pick up.
Okay, so if life is literally everywhere, the next big question is, how does it all start? Where does it come from? Well, the text breaks it down into 4 types of births. But here's the catch. They are not all created equal. They actually split into 2 very different paths. And the path a life starts on, well, that decides its ultimate fate. It determines whether its spirit sticks around or if it just, poof, vanishes. And here is that fundamental split we were just talking about. On one hand, you have beings born from an egg or womb, like us and other animals. According to this text, we have an immortal spirit that reincarnates. But then there's life that comes from moisture, think plants, or through what's called transformation, like lice. For them, it's a one-way trip. When that life ends, its spirit is just gone, annihilated. So you've got this massive divide between life that endures and life that's just temporary.
Now, here's a crucial point. None of this is supposed to be random. It's all part of a preset program. You can almost think of it like a kind of cosmic computer code. So whether it's an animal being born or lice just sort of appearing when the conditions are right, everything is just unfolding according to a pre-written script, a design that was locked in the very moment that life form was created.
So with all this life popping up in different ways, you might think it's just a chaotic mess, right? But nope, it's all meticulously organized into this grand hierarchy, a sort of cosmic ladder. And in this system, it's really clear that not all life is created equal. Where you are on that ladder all comes down to a balance between your energy and your physical form. And the rule for how this ladder works is actually pretty simple. The more solid and physical you are, the more stuck in your form, the less energy you have, and the more of you there are. That's kind of the base of the cosmic pyramid. But as you climb higher, beings become less physical, more formless. They can even change their shape whenever they want. And these high-energy beings, they're supposed to be incredibly powerful and extremely rare. Just to give you a sense of the scale here, it's huge. The vast, vast majority of life, we're talking like 80%, is considered low level. And humanity? We're placed in this really interesting middle ground, making up about 15% of all life, which leaves that tiny little sliver at the top, just 5%. And that's reserved for the absolute rarest, most powerful beings in existence, the gods and the immortals. So, okay, that's the big picture. But what does it all mean for us, for humans, stuck here in the middle of this cosmic ladder? We have a physical body, that's obvious, but we also supposedly have one of those immortal spirits. So how are we supposed to think about that? What is the relationship between the two?
Well, the text gives us this absolutely brilliant metaphor. Think of it like this. Your body is just a vehicle, like a car. And your spirit, that's the driver, the real you. And when you think about it that way, this simple analogy just completely reframes the whole idea of death, doesn't it? It means death isn't the end of the driver. It's just the end of that particular car's time on the road.
Exactly. So death is really just a transition. The driver, your spirit, just gets out of the old, broken-down car and keeps on going. And that next stop on the journey, it could be anywhere. Maybe it's a heavenly realm. Maybe you just get a new car and reincarnate as another human. Or maybe you get demoted to being an animal or even sent to a hell-like state. The point is, the journey just doesn't stop.
Which of course brings us to the most critical, most personal question in this whole worldview. If our spirit just keeps going, then what decides where it goes next? What's the GPS for the soul? And the answer, according to this text, is actually found inside of us. It's all about the power of our own consciousness.
Yeah, it turns out we're not just passive passengers in this car. This worldview says that we are constantly, actively shaping our own spiritual selves. Our form is not fixed. It says that a person, just through their own inner state of being, can literally begin to transform their essence into that of an animal. Or, on the flip side, elevate themselves into something divine.
So you're probably wondering, how does this transformation actually work? Well, the text lays out a very direct cause and effect relationship. See, every single thought you have, every action you take, it's all shaping your consciousness day by day. But it all culminates in one single critical moment, your state of mind at the very instant of death. That final mental snapshot, that's the GPS coordinate for your next destination. If your final thought is on a celestial realm, boom, that's where you go. If your consciousness is like that of an animal, well, that's the world you get sent to.
So really, when you get down to it, this whole thing isn't just some fascinating cosmic map. It's a profound call to action. The text is basically arguing that exploring the mystery of life itself is way more important than chasing after money or fame. Why? Because in this worldview, what you focus on determines not just how you live this life, but what you will literally become in the next one. Which leaves us with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? With every thought you're having today, what are you becoming?